Good morning. Today we look at Exodus chapters 6 and 7. And so these two chapters they're the finish of the first 7 chapters of Leviticus, as I mentioned, are for the offerings, the sin offerings, and ways to help the Israelites, live holy lives or live lives acceptable to God. So these two chapters kind of are more instructions to the priests for the offerings that are given. And as I read through them, my mind just gets kind of, I can't keep track of all of it. And I am so glad, so fortunate that I don't have to, keep track of all of these different kinds of offerings and how to do all of this. I'm sure that, as Aaron and his sons, the priests, grew up with it. I mean, they didn't grow up with it. They are introduced to it by God now. But I'm sure that they had to refer to the instructions several times to get so that they were doing it correctly. And I know that, there are things that we do, very seldom, once in a while, that we have to look at the instructions for. And, I remember, there have been times when we would make scotcheroos a lot, and I mean, you just knew the recipe. You didn't have to pull the recipe card out and look for it. But if you were going to make, something else, something that you made, once or twice a year, pull the recipe card out and look for it. And so I can imagine that as Moses came with these instructions, that they had to have been, written down, so that people would be able to refer to the instructions and to know what was going on and to be able to do them properly, because each one of them is a little bit different in so many ways. Chapter 6 begins, when any of you sin and commit a trespass against the Lord by deceiving a neighbor in a matter of deposit or pledge, or by robbery, or if you have defrauded a neighbor, or if you found something lost and lied about it, if you swear falsely regarding any of the various things that one might do, when you have sinned and realized your guilt. So, I mean, these are some of the, in a way, kind of an expansion of, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt not bear false witness, and thou shalt not steal, I mean, and so here by, finding something and keeping it rather than making sure you get it returned back to the owner is a sin. And we understand that, don't we? Yeah. So, but it's, this offering, or anything else which you may have sworn falsely. And then here, you shall repay the principal amount plus 1/5 of it. So you're adding 20%. So, that's a substantial amount. And then not only that, but then you shall bring to the priest as your guilt offering a ram without blemish from the flock. And I understand, the ram wasn't the most valuable part of the flock, but I mean, you need to have some rams in order to have some lambs. So you can't, sacrifice all of them, but it wasn't just to be some old scruffy deadbeat ram. It was to, these sacrifices were pure, unblemished, and most likely, some of the younger ones. But anyway, the priest will then make atonement, and you will be forgiven of those things. And then verse 8 starts that, now, okay, command Aaron and his sons saying, this is the ritual. This is how you do it. Okay. And if it was just one, I mean, it wouldn't be so bad to keep track of. But, here, chapter 6 and 7 are kind of, as I said, some of the expansions or reminders of what to do for these different sin offerings and the restitutions and that. And, verse 10, the priest shall put on his linen vestments after putting on his linen undergarments next to his body. He shall take up the ashes of the fire which has reduced the burnt offering and place them beside the altar. So it's been burnt. And then he shall take off his vestments, his linen garments, and put on other garments, and then take the ashes out to a clean place. So you can't, you don't have your good Sunday clothes on and take the ashes out. You got to change clothes. So, I mean, what happens if you forget, it's not a good thing. And then on this altar where the sin offerings and all of the offerings are offered, verse 13, a perpetual fire shall be kept burning on the altar. It shall not go out. And it's a reminder that, there's a lot of sin. And how many people can go a day without sinning in some fashion, and even if you go a week or 10 days, you think about all of these Israelites that are there, there's got to be a lot of sin happening. And so these altars, I would imagine, got fairly good use. Yeah, but it's, so then we come, verse 14 is the ritual of the grain offering. And again, how, it's just a portion of the grain offering that is totally burned. And, in verse 16, Aaron and his sons shall eat what is left of it. It will be eaten as unleavened cakes in a holy place. Not just out in the street someplace, not out in the middle of the field, but in a holy place. So in the sanctuary, I would guess, but it goes on that way. And, every male among the descendants of Aaron shall eat it. And there again is kind of that reminder that, the sons of Aaron, the sons of Levi, all of the descendants of Levi are the priests. And it isn't, just, well, if you wanna, but this is who you are. You're of the priestly priestly tribe and come that way. And then verses 19 through 23 again are a little bit more about the ordination of Aaron and his sons as priests. This is the offering that Aaron and his sons will offer on the day that he is anointed, or we could say in our language today, ordained, consecrated, set apart. And the grain offering, in verse 23, every grain offering offered by a priest will be wholly burned. None of it will be kept, for food to eat and everything's that way. And then 24 and on again, the ritual of the sin offering, and going on, and then again with that, if it's done in an earthen vessel, made out of clay or pottery, well, then the vessel is shattered and is discarded. If it's done in a bronze bowl, it shall be scoured and rinsed, and so I would think that they're going to use an awful lot of metal pots, whatever they can for these sacrifices, in that way. Chapter 7 again continues the ritual of the guilt offering. It is most holy, at the spot where the offering is burnt, and it goes on. And there's quite a bit about the guilt offering. And then verse 11 starts with the ritual of sacrifice of the offering for the well-being, the well-being. So, this is an offering of thanks and praise and glory. If you're offering of well-being, to me, that's giving thanks. And so they have a ritual of an offering, a sacrifice for that. They'll offer it with unleavened cakes mixed with oil. And then, with that, you bring your offering with the cakes of unleavened bread, and you make one cake from each offering and share it to the Lord. And it shall all be eaten on that day. But if it shall be eaten on that day you offer the sacrifice, and what's left shall be eaten the next day. But if you eat it the third day, you can't do that. So you can eat leftovers next day, but not 3 days later. So God is very specific in his instructions to Moses and to the Israelites, and especially to the priests and the rituals of the sacrifice. Verse 19 again starts with, flesh that touches unclean things. And so then we're going to get into that clean and unclean in a little bit here. But, so they just had to be aware of many different things in their worship, in their sacrifice. And God was giving the Israelites in this, and as I said, as they introduce this, God is showing the Israelites how they can live holy lives, how they can live lives that are acceptable to Him, and what they must do for the forgiveness of their sins, and I guess I shouldn't say it's all for the forgiveness. Well, it's for forgiveness of sins, but it's not a guarantee of salvation, because salvation is always a gift, pure, unearned, undeserved.